a three-cylinder engine producing just 63 horsepower. To most enthusiasts, that sounds like something you'd find powering a lawnmower, not a sports car. But when that engine screams to 8,100 RPM from the factory, equipped with individual throttle bodies, and sits behind the driver in a mid-engine layout, you've got something truly special. This is the Honda E07A, the high-revving heart of the Honda Beat, and it represents everything Honda stood for in the early 1990s, engineering brilliance within impossible constraints. While the world was obsessing over turbocharged inline sixes and V8s, Honda was proving that displacement isn't everything. This tiny 656cc three-cylinder would become the soul of one of Japan's most beloved Kei sports cars, and its story is about more than just numbers. It's about passion, innovation, and wringing every last drop of performance from regulations that were designed to limit, not inspire. This is the story of the Honda E07A.
To understand why the E07A exists, we need to understand Japan's Kei car regulations. In 1949, post-war Japan was rebuilding, and most citizens couldn't afford full-size vehicles. The government created a special vehicle category called Keiji Dosha, meaning light automobile, offering significant tax breaks and insurance discounts to stimulate car ownership and economic growth. The rules were simple but strict. Tiny dimensions, minuscule engines, and later a power cap. By 1990, when Honda was developing the Beat, the regulations had evolved to allow 660 cc's of displacement, a maximum length of 3.3 meters, a width of 1.4 meters, and here's the kicker, a gentleman's agreement among Japanese manufacturers limiting power to 64 horsepower. Most manufacturers took the easy route, bolting small turbochargers to their Kei engines to reach that 64 horsepower limit. It was practical, it was affordable, and it worked. But Honda had other plans. They wanted to build a naturally aspirated Kei sports car that could rev like a motorcycle, handle like a go-kart, and capture the pure driving joy that Soichiro Honda himself demanded from every vehicle bearing his name. The E07A didn't start life as a sports car engine. It was born from Honda's O series of three-cylinder engines, which trace their lineage back to the Honda EH engine, a simple two-cylinder unit. The EO series was designed primarily for Kei car applications, powering everything from the humble Honda Today city car to commercial Honda Acti trucks. But when Honda's young engineering team set out to create the Beat in the late 1980s, they needed something different. They needed an engine that could deliver genuine sports car character while staying within those rigid 660cc constraints. The solution was elegant. Instead of forced induction, they would engineer the E07A to breathe better than any other Kei engine on the market. The foundation was solid. A die-cast aluminum block and cylinder bores kept weight down, a crucial consideration when every kilogram matters in a car targeting just 760 kilograms. The SOHC 12-valve head featured a cross-flow design with 2 intake and 2 exhaust valves positioned on either side of the spark plug, which sat at the top center of the combustion chamber. This layout optimized combustion efficiency and allowed for excellent airflow characteristics. With a bore and stroke of 66 mm by 64 mm, the E07A displaced exactly 656 cc, pushing right up against the 660 cc regulatory limit. The compression ratio sat at 10.0 to 1, relatively high for its era, and a clear indication that Honda was prioritizing naturally aspirated performance. But the real magic, that came from a system Honda called MTREC.
MTREC stands for Multi-Throttle Responsive Engine Control, and it was Honda's answer to achieving race car throttle response in a street-legal Kei car. While most engines use a single throttle body feeding all cylinders through an intake manifold, the E07A MTREC featured individual throttle bodies for each of its 3 cylinders. This wasn't just for show. Individual throttle bodies eliminate the intake manifold's inherent restrictions and equalize airflow to each cylinder. The result? instantaneous throttle response, a linear power delivery, and that intoxicating induction roar that makes naturally aspirated engines so special. When you blip the throttle on an E07A, all three cylinders respond individually and immediately. But MTREC went further than just mechanical advantages. The system incorporated Honda's PGM-FI multi-point fuel injection, which could modify the air-fuel ratio of individual cylinders based on RPM. At idle and low speeds, the system maintained stability and drivability. But as engine speeds climbed, MTREC optimized each cylinder's mixture for maximum power output while maintaining stable operation. The intake runners were carefully tuned for high RPM performance, sacrificing some low-end torque in favor of peak power up top. This was a deliberate choice. The Beat wasn't meant to be a stoplight warrior. It was designed to be revved, to be wrung out, to sing its high-pitched three-cylinder song all the way to its 8,500 RPM red line.
Let's talk specifics. The E07A MTREC in the Honda Beat produced 64 PS, which translates to 63 horsepower, at 8,100 RPM. Peak torque was a modest 44 pound-feet, arriving at 7,000 RPM. To most people, these numbers sound pathetic. 63 horsepower, modern economy cars make 3 times that. But context is everything. That 63 horsepower translates to 96 horsepower per liter, naturally aspirated, in 1991. For perspective, the legendary Honda B16A, which debuted 2 years earlier with VTEC, achieved 100 horsepower per liter. The E07A came remarkably close to that benchmark without variable valve timing, purely through optimized breathing and high RPM tuning. More importantly, those 63 horses only had to move 1,676 pounds. The Beat's power-to-weight ratio was approximately 188 horsepower per ton, which put it in the ballpark of contemporary hot hatches that weighed twice as much. And unlike turbocharged kei cars that made peak power briefly before hitting the limiter, the E07A's power was accessible, linear, and predictable across its entire rev range. 0 to 60 took about 13 seconds, and top speed was electronically limited to 84 miles per hour. These aren't impressive numbers, but they miss the point entirely. The Beat wasn't about straight-line speed. It was about cornering speeds, about carrying momentum, about the visceral joy of a tiny, perfectly balanced sports car that begged to be driven hard on twisty roads.
The Honda Beat itself was a product of passion. Developed by a young team of Honda engineers and signed off by Soichiro Honda himself shortly before his death in 1991, the Beat represented Honda's sports car philosophy, distilled to its purest form. Italian design house Pininfarina penned the styling, creating a pint-sized roadster that looked like a scaled-down Ferrari from certain angles. Mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, manual transmission only, and that glorious E07A mounted transversely behind the seats. The tiny fuel tank had to be offset to the right side of the engine compartment to make room for the engine, which sat slightly offset to the left. Every design decision prioritized handling and driver engagement over comfort or practicality. The Beat was marketed as midship amusement, and it delivered. McPherson struts at all 4 corners, the first Kei car with 4-wheel disc brakes, and optional limited slip differential on the PP111 model. With such light weight and near-perfect weight distribution, the Beat could embarrass much more powerful cars on tight, technical roads. And at the center of it all was that howling E07A, sitting just inches behind the driver's head. With the soft top down and the throttle pinned, the individual throttle bodies created a mechanical symphony that no turbocharged engine could match. It wasn't loud in the traditional sense. It was purposeful, mechanical, alive.
While the E07A MTREC found its spiritual home in the Beat, Honda didn't limit the technology to one model. In 1993, the MTREC system filtered down to the Honda Today Kei car. In this application, the engine was detuned slightly, producing 57 horsepower with emphasis on low-end torque and drivability for city commuting. The base E07A also powered countless Honda Acti trucks and vans, the workhorses of Japanese businesses. Without MTREC, these engines produced around 51 horsepower, but were valued for their reliability and fuel efficiency rather than sporting character. The E07A's die-cast aluminum construction made it lightweight enough for K-trucks while remaining robust enough for commercial applications. The E0 engine series continued evolving, eventually contributing technology to the ECA1 engine used in the first-generation Honda Insight hybrid. While that engine displaced 995 cc's and featured different specifications, it shared the fundamental lightweight aluminum construction philosophy pioneered by the E07A.
Perhaps surprisingly, for such a tiny engine, the E07A has developed a cult following among tuners, particularly in Japan. The engine's robust aluminum construction and rev-happy nature make it an interesting platform for forced induction. Custom turbo setups have seen E07A engines producing 250 horsepower or more. Honda Auto Okayama built a turbocharged Honda Today powered by an E07A MTREC that lapped Tsukuba Circuit in just over 63 seconds, an astonishing time for a 30-year-old K car. With only 680 kilograms to push around, even 250 horsepower creates an absolutely mental power-to-weight ratio. More modest turbo kits can add 40 to 60 horsepower on stock internals, bringing total output to around 100-110 horsepower. While this compromises reliability and the engine's naturally aspirated character, it demonstrates the E07A's fundamental strength. The aluminum block handles boost reasonably well, though serious power requires forged internals and careful tuning. For purists, naturally aspirated modifications focus on improving what the E07A already does well. Aftermarket exhaust systems, particularly from companies like HKS and 5-Zigen, free up some top-end power while enhancing that distinctive three-cylinder soundtrack. Port and polish work on the cylinder head, more aggressive camshafts, and ECU tuning can extract a few additional horsepower while preserving throttle response. Some enthusiasts have swapped the E07A entirely, replacing it with motorcycle engines like the Suzuki Hayabusa Inline 4. While this dramatically increases power, it somewhat misses the point of the Beat's original philosophy. The E07A's character, its lightweight aluminum construction, and that MTREC throttle response are integral to the Beat's identity.
No engine discussion is complete without addressing reliability, and here the E07A shows its Honda DNA. When properly maintained, these engines are remarkably durable despite their high revving nature. The most common issue is excessive oil consumption, particularly in higher mileage examples. The E07A's naturally aspirated design means it works hard to produce its power, and if previous owners neglected oil changes or used low-quality lubricants, piston ring wear can occur. This manifests as blue smoke from the exhaust and steadily dropping oil levels. The solid rocker arms and timing belt require regular maintenance. Unlike hydraulic systems, the valve lash must be checked and adjusted periodically. The timing belt should be replaced according to Honda's service intervals, typically every 60 to 80,000 kilometers, along with the water pump and accessory belts. The aluminum construction, while beneficial for weight savings, requires careful attention to cooling system maintenance. Overheating can warp the cylinder head, and the all-aluminum block expands more than cast iron, making proper gasket sealing critical. Regular coolant changes and monitoring for leaks prevent most issues. For E07A MTREC versions, the individual throttle bodies require synchronization to ensure smooth idling and optimal performance. This is more involved in servicing a single throttle body, but isn't particularly difficult for experienced mechanics familiar with ITB setups. Overall, the E07A rewards proper care with longevity. Examples with documented maintenance history regularly exceed 150,000 kilometers while maintaining strong performance. For an engine that redlines above 8,000 RPM from the factory, that's impressive durability. Production of the Honda Beat ended in February 1996 after just 33,600 units were built. Two-thirds of those came in the first year, with demand tapering off as the Japanese economic bubble burst. But the Beat's influence far exceeded its sales numbers. It proved that K cars didn't have to be boring appliances. Along with competitors like the Suzuki Cappuccino and Mazda AutoZam AZ1, the Beat demonstrated that genuine sports car thrills could come in tiny packages. These cars influenced an entire generation of enthusiasts who learned that fun wasn't measured in horsepower figures, but in engagement, balance, and purity of purpose. The E07A specifically showed Honda's commitment to engineering excellence, even in their smallest engines. While other manufacturers took the easy turbo route, Honda engineered MTREC, developed individual throttle bodies, and created an engine that felt more like a superbike motor than a city car power plant. In 2015, Honda finally released a spiritual successor, the S660. Powered by a turbocharged E07A inline 3, it carried forward the Beat's mid-engine rear-drive philosophy while incorporating modern technology. The S660 was faster, more refined, and met contemporary safety and emissions standards. But it lost something in the translation, that raw mechanical purity that made the original Beat special. The S660's production ended in 2022, marking the end of Honda's K sports car lineage. In an era of electric vehicles, increasing regulations, and shifting consumer preferences, cars like the Beat and its E07A engine feel increasingly like relics from a different time, a time when automakers could still build impractical, joyous little machines purely for the love of driving.
Today, surviving Honda Beats are becoming increasingly collectible. They're now legal for import to the United States under the 25-year rule, and enthusiasts are discovering what Japanese drivers knew in 1991. These are special little machines. The E07A represents something we're losing in modern automotive engineering. It's an engine that prioritizes character and involvement over raw numbers. It demands to be revved, rewards smooth technique, and sounds absolutely glorious when driven properly. There's no turbo lag, no artificial enhancement, just mechanical purity and high RPM excitement. In 2010, 596 Honda Beats gathered at Twin Ring Motegi Circuit, setting a Guinness World Record for the largest parade of Honda vehicles. This wasn't a manufacturer-organized event, it was enthusiast-driven, a testament to the passionate community that has formed around these tiny sports cars and their remarkable engines. For collectors and enthusiasts, finding a well-maintained Beat with a healthy E07A is increasingly difficult. Prices have risen significantly as appreciation for these cars grows. Rust is common, particularly in door sills, hood corners, and wheel wells, though typically not structural. High-mileage examples with worn engines are affordable, but pristine, low-mileage Beats command premium prices.
The Honda E07A didn't change the automotive world. It didn't become the benchmark for future engines. It won't be remembered alongside the 2JZ, the RB26, or even Honda's own B-Series. And that's okay, because the E07A was never meant to be those things. It was meant to be the heart of a tiny, joyful sports car that could make you smile on a Sunday morning drive. It was meant to prove that regulations designed to limit could instead inspire creativity. It was meant to show that naturally aspirated, high-revving engines had a place, even in the world's smallest sports cars. At just 656 cc's with 3 cylinders and 63 horsepower, the E07A MTREC accomplished something remarkable. It made the Honda Beat feel special. Not fast in a straight line, not powerful on paper, but special in the way that truly great sports cars feel special. Alive, engaging, rewarding, and utterly unforgettable. The E07A represents peak 1990s Honda. Fearlessly innovative, obsessively engineered, and completely uncompromising in its pursuit of driving joy. In an automotive landscape increasingly dominated by turbocharged everything, the E07A reminds us that sometimes less really is more. Sometimes all you need is 656 cc's, 3 cylinders, individual throttle bodies, and an 8,500 RPM redline to create something truly special. This is the Honda E07A, the Beat's high-revving heart, and it deserves to be remembered not for what it lacked,
but for everything it gave us, pure, unfiltered, mechanical joy.